Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, you're welcome, and if you're a returning subscriber, you're welcome as well. In today's video, we are going to learn how to cut a princess dart bustier with freehand. So if this is something that interests you, consider to watch this video to the very end. Make sure you like this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel. So let's dive into the tutorial. So right here, this is going to be a freehand cutting, okay, and I have already marked out my starting point line, and the length I'm working with 16 inches as my length, and then 1.5 inch for joining allowance, so I have 16.5. What I'm going to do is to mark the back measurement, which is half of it is 8 inches. So I'll go ahead now and mark 8 inches. Now we need to get our chest line. To get your chest line, you can also use half of your shoulder to shoulder measurement to get your chest line. But because our measurement differs, there are people who have the same shoulder to shoulder measurement but have different busts. So in that case, what you are going to do is simply divide your bust divided by 6. So whatever you have, you had 1.5 to it, and then it gives you your chest line. So the bust I'm working with here is 40 divided by 6 give me 6.5. So when I had 1.5 to it, I have 8 inches. So I'm going to be marking 8 inches as the chest line. Okay. You also mark half of your shoulder to shoulder measurement where you have the chest line, which is here. So go ahead now and rule everything together. So once that is done, the next thing I will do is to mark the bust point of 11 inches. Okay. And then the under bust of 14 inches. I'm going to mark the under bust of 14 inches. Then rule everything together. So the next thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to do our shoulder slant, and then the neck width I'm working with, I'm just going to do the neck standard first before determining the neck width. So now that I've slanted this, I'm going to determine the actual neck width I want, which is 3.5. I'm going to mark it here. Okay, and you can also determine the neck depth you want. I'm going to be using 6 inches as the neck depth, even though I'll be doing a asymmetric neckline, so I'm just going to leave the neckline for now. So we are going to divide what we have left. You determine the midpoint. Okay, then you go in by 1/2 inch. So the next thing is for us to curve this downward. So this is what the armhole will look like. So the next thing we are going to do now is to determine the nipple to nipple measurement, the measurement you have from one nipple to another. So for this one, the measurement from one nipple to another is 8 inches. Now because this fabric is on fold, so we also need to divide the nipple measurement into 2. So half of 8 inches is going to give us 4 inches. Now because this is a pattern, this is a freehand, I'm cutting this on exactly on the fabric. So instead of measuring the exact 4 inches as my dart, I'm going to be adding extra 1/2 inch stitching allowance to it. So when I add that 1/2 inch to it, by the time I'm stitching my darts together, it's not going to affect the 4 inches nipple to nipple measurement. Just like if I'm to be cutting this on our pattern paper, if I'm to be cutting this on the pattern paper, I'll be measuring the exact 4 inches. But when I want to put the pattern paper on my fabric, I'll need to be adding 1/2 inch at the front of the pattern paper. So that will now give it 4.5. So since I am measuring this exactly on the fabric, you need to add the 1/2 inch to your nipple, half of your nipple to nipple measurement, which will now serve as the stitching allowance. So instead of measuring 4 inches, I'll measure 4.5. So this is the 4.5. I'll measure it all the way down. So what I'll do now is from my bust line, from this bust line here, just go up by 1/2 inch. You go up by 1/2 inch here. This is the 1/2 inch. Okay, and then you also come down by 1/2 inch. This will ease your bust area by the time we want to connect our darts together. So go ahead now and connect your nipple to nipple measurements together. So once that has been done, as you can see, so the next thing I'm going to do is on this side towards the folded part, you are going to be taking 1 inch inward. I'm going to measure 1 inch. You can use 1 inch, you can use half an inch, but I'm just going to use 1 inch here. So that 1 inch, you're going to place it on the under bust and also at the waist. Okay, is that 1 inch. Now on the other side of the dart, I'm going to be placing, you can use 1.5 and you can use 2 inches depending on how pronounced you want the bust area to be. So on this part, I'll be using 1.5 here. I'll also use 1.5 here. So towards this folded part, I use 1 inch at the under bust, 1 inch at the waist, and towards this side, I use 1.5 at the waist, at the under bust, then 1.5 at the waist. So what I'm going to do now is to connect this together. Okay, connect it together this way, and then you now need to curve this. If you have a armhole curve, you can definitely use your armhole curve or just use your free hand to do this. Okay, as you can see, I've curved this. Now, because this is a princess dart bustier, on this midpoint line, I'll be coming down by 1 inch. As you can see, I'll be coming down by 1 inch. So that 1 inch, I'm going to connect it to this part here. And then the other one, I'll also bring this other one and connect it to this part here, as you can see. So I'm going to connect it like so. And then make sure you blend. You have to blend it so that it does not look sharp. Can you see that our bust is forming? Then this other part too, you also curve it to this part. So this is the essence of the half an inch I came up with and half an inch I came down with. This will prevent this part from being sharp. But instead of being sharp, it's going to be curved like this. It will give you room around here, as you can see. So now on this part, I'm now going to be extending the leg around this side. Okay, you need to extend it by 2 inches, because if you don't do that, it will become short. By the time you are stitching it together now, this part will become shorter than this part. Okay, so that's the essence of doing that. So after you have extended this by 2 inches, just go ahead now and recurve the armhole. After stitching, you can still recut your armhole after stitching. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like now, as you can see. So the next thing we are going to do now is to take our side seam allowance. So the bust measurement I'm working with is 40. 40 divided by 4 will give us 10. The next allowance is our side seam allowance of 1.5 inch as the side seam allowance. Now the allowance we are taking away from here, which is 1 inch, we also need to replace it back to our armhole, because if you don't do that, your armhole will be short. Whatever you are taking away from the armhole, you also need to add it back to the side seam. Okay, so I'm taking 1 inch from this armhole. I'm also going to add the 1 inch. Now you also need to join this armhole back together by half an inch on both sides, which make it another 1 inch. So you are also going to add it back like so. So we have a whole lot of allowance to replace. So when you do this, you will have exactly what your measurement is meant to be. If you don't do that, your armhole will be very short. You won't have any allowance at your bust area. You will end up not having any side seam allowance at your bust area if you don't replace everything you took off from your armhole. Now coming to the under bust measurement is 36. 36 divided by 4 will give us 9. Whatever we are taking away from here, I'm taking 2.5 inch away from here. You also need 1 inch to stitch this back together by half an inch on both sides. So that 2.5 inch we took away from here plus that 1 inch will give us 3.5. Okay, and we are also going to need 1.5 for side seam allowance. You also add it back. The next thing is our waist. The waist I'm working with is 37 divided by 4 will give us 9.25. So just measure all the side seam allowance we have here. Altogether what I have here is 5. So I'm also going to add that 5 inches here. Okay, so that's that. So just go ahead now and connect everything together. I'm going to connect everything together, as you can see. Okay, so what I'll do now is to cut this out. I'm going to be cutting this out. So around the shoulder line, I'll be adding stitching allowance of half an inch to the shoulder line. Okay, so that's that. So I'll go ahead now and cut this out. See, this is what it's going to look like. You can see what the bust points, what it looks like here. So you guys can see the essence of extending the space. Had it been I did not extend the space, you see, this is where the actual armhole is. It would have been short, but because I extended this, you can see that it has almost became the same thing. Can you guys see? Okay, you can even add more than 2 inches just to be on the safe side. You can add more than 2 inches to it. Now for the neckline, I'm just going to notch the neckline here. So because I want an asymmetric neckline, okay, so this part is going to have allowance of half inch. There's half inch allowance here. So from here, I will just come down by I'll be coming down by 7 inches. I'll be coming down by 7 inches, and then I'm going to draw a straight line. So this is 7 inches right here. Okay, so I'm going to, this is an asymmetric neckline, so I'm just going to make a curve. You guys can see what the curve looks like. So I'm going to be adding stitching allowance of 1/2 inch because I don't want to cut exactly on that. I'll cut this out. Guys, this is what the neckline is going to look like. Okay, so when I place this side by side on it, it's going to look like this. Alright guys, so as you can see, I have ironed my fusible interfacing on the fabric. So make sure you also cut out your lining the same way I cut out the fabric. Okay, and I also added wadding to it. Now your wadding is going to be starting from the underbust. As you can see, my wadding started from the underbust. Okay, and the width of my wadding is about 5 inches. That is how wide I want my wadding to be. And from your bust point, you can just mark like 4 to 5 inches upward from your bust point, then connect it together to give you this curve shape. Okay, so I'll take this to my sewing machine now and then go and start coupling all of this together. I hope you understand. So you are going to pick one of the side and you are going to place it on the center parts. So go ahead and start stitching. I've already stitched the first dart, so I'm doing the second one now. You can see how I am positioning the bustier, so you do the same thing. Now everything I'm doing now, you're going to repeat the same thing on the lining. So once you are done sewing, just push it outward like this and you should have your bustier looking like this. So the next thing is to notch the bustier, notch it at the under bust and all of those curved place. You're going to notch it. Now after notching it, go ahead and iron it. It is very important that you iron your bustier. So here is an homemade tailor's ham. Okay, so just put it underneath the bustier, open it up like so. The essence of notching is to enable you open this part up easily. So just spray your water. If you don't have a steaming iron, then go ahead and iron everything open. Okay, make sure you use the tailor's arm. The tailor's arm will help keep your bustier in shape so that it doesn't look flat. So go ahead and iron it just like I'm doing now. So you are going to repeat the same thing on the other side. You can repeat the same process on the lining as well, or you can just top stitch the dart allowance on your lining. You can top stitch it if you don't want to iron it open like this. So once you are done, you also turn it to the other side, then you iron the right side of the fabric as well, just like I'm doing. Once you are done, your dart is going to be looking really nice and beautiful. So this is what it looks like after iron. You can see the difference between the one I ironed and the one I did not iron, and you can see the inside as well. Okay, so this is what your bustier should look like this. So here is the final look of our princess dart bustier top. I hope you learned something in this video. Thank you for watching this video to the very end. Please consider to subscribe, like and share this video, and I will see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye bye.